normally drawn up. An engagement letter is normally drawn up to guide out, what should be expected. What should be expected? What should be expected from an engagement? From an engagement. It forms the contractual basis. It forms the contractual basis. It forms the contractual basis. It forms the contractual basis of an assurance engagement. Of an assurance engagement. Of an assurance engagement. Let's go to the requirements for an engagement letter. The requirements for an engagement letter. Requirements of an engagement letter. It includes the following elements. 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 So one, the three separate parties. The three separate parties. The three separate parties. The three separate parties to the engagement. The three separate parties to the engagement. The three separate parties to the engagement, i.e. the practitioner, responsible party, and intended users. Number two, the appropriate underlying subject matter. 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 And subject matter information. And subject matter information. And subject matter information. And subject matter information. Number three, the suitable criteria to be applied. The suitable criteria to be applied. The suitable criterion to be applied. And the requirements, that this may be made available to users. That this may be made available to users. That this may be made available to users. Next, the expectation that the responsible party, or others will provide access to information of the required quality, to information of the required quality. Next, the expected form of the written assurance report. The expected form of the written assurance report. The expected form of the written assurance report. And next, the objective and the scope. The objective and the scope of the assurance engagement. The objective and the scope of the assurance engagement. The objective and the scope of the assurance engagement. And next, the responsibility of the responsible party and the practitioner. The responsibilities of the responsible party and the practitioner. The responsibilities of the responsible party and the practitioner. Next, assurance standards and related guidance to be applied. Assurance standards and related guidance to be applied. Assurance standards and related guidance to be applied. Next, the expectation that the management will provide. The expectation that the management will provide. The expectation that management will provide written representation. Written representation. Written representations. Written representations. As later shall come to discuss your letter. Your written representation is a letter that's normally written by the directors to the auditor and confirm some valuable evidence that took place during the verbal discussion between the auditor and the client officers. So just a letter providing more evidence to the auditor. It's always a requirement upon the completion of the audit, auditor should be able to get this letter from the management. Now your letter, it can be drafted by the auditor because knows what is requiring the managers to be able to provide evidence on, and put the manager to task by just signing or they acknowledge the content that stated that particular letter. Okay, after that one, we go to next. Description of the scope of testing. Description of the scope of testing. Description of the scope of testing. The next, terms limiting the practitioner's liability. 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 Then the last one, commercial matters. Commercial matters. Commercial matters such as professional fees to charge, such as professional fees to charge, professional fees to charge the client, professional fees to charge the client, timetable, termination rights, etc. Alafu let's now just look for this one, though their content is more the same. So andika hapo a subtopic, overall content consideration, overall content consideration, overall content consideration, overall content consideration for an engagement letter, for an engagement letter, for an engagement letter, for an engagement letter, for non-assurance services, for non-assurance services, for non-assurance services. So just list them. Ya kwanza itakuwa na addressee, addressee, addressee. Because addressee is the person who is meant to receive the services to be provided at the end, which is basically the client. And number two, introduction. 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 So introduction hapo, for example, the purpose. The purpose. Number three, the scope and objective. The scope and objective. The scope and objective. The scope and objective. So the scope and the objective is a common with the nature. Like what tells the nature of the procedure, like for example, what procedure to be performed, what engagement procedure to be performed. And our objective maybe the aim of performing those identified procedures. Next is additional responsibility of the practitioner. Additional responsibility of the practitioner. Next, details of the engagement staff. Details of the engagement staff. Details of engagement staff. And next, professional fees to be charged. Professional fees to be charged. Next point, standard terms and conditions for non-assurance services. Standard terms and conditions for non-assurance services. Standard terms and conditions for non-assurance services. The next, the client agreement to the terms and conditions. The client's agreement to the terms and conditions. The client agreement to the terms and conditions. The client agreement to the terms and conditions. So those are the matters to be considered in those important letters of engagement. So without them, that work cannot begin unless those matters been agreed by both the parties. So your letter, it will be drafted by the auditor, then sent to the client officers, where they have the obligation to accept it. Okay, to acknowledge your letter, then the work cannot continue. So it will have to sit down with them and discuss the matters leading to the misunderstandings where they're not willing to sign the letter. Now, Kisha clarifies of it, auditor can have the letter be revised. Like revised, then send it back to them and request them again to do what? To sign. Wakikata sasa, the auditor will disengage himself from such kind of work. So this letter, in a conversation on two occasions, that is not sent on two occasions. Two for now, our clients have two are the existing client, one existing a client. And now people are the new client. So let us understand for the new client or the existing client. For the existing client, is not a marked form, it has to be sent. But for the new client, is a must that engagement letter must be sent. Now, for this existing client, for the cases whereby there will be a need to send a revised engagement letter. For example, they need to send a revised engagement letter. For those circumstances that can lead to the need for the order to send a revised engagement letter. Like kama kuna matter that's affecting the scope of the work or the scope of that particular engagement, then there shall be a need for what you to revise the letter. Kama kuna maybe changes in the senior management from the client entity, kutakuwa the need to revise the letter because those parties may not understand some of the responsibility that had been agreed by the auditor a much earlier. Kama kuna maybe the change in the size of the client business, like they have moved to a different location and open more branches or more division, then they shall need to do it. The letter be revised. Also very important to know the circumstances whereby auditor may be required to send a revised engagement letter, or what are the conditions that may necessitate a revised engagement letter to be sent to the client. So andika hapo point to note. It is always a must that the engagement letter, it is always a must that the engagement letter to be sent in case of a new client, in case of a new client, in case of a new client, in case of a new client. However, for an existing client, a revised engagement letter can only be sent if there is a significant situational changes in the client business. Situational changes in the client business. Situational changes in the client business. For example, one, to accommodate additional scope of work. To accommodate additional scope of work. Number two, a significant change in the senior management. A significant change in the senior management. A significant change in the senior management. A significant change in the senior management, e.g. the board, e.g. the board, the CEO, And next, significant change in the nature and the size of the client's business. Significant change in the nature and the size of the client's business. Significant change in the nature and the size of the client's business. Next, change in the ownership of the company. Change in the ownership of the company. Change in the ownership of the company. And next, change in the financial reporting framework. Change in the financial reporting framework. Change in the financial reporting framework.